Hey out there, today I'm going to show you a spin transition. It's not built into Davinci Resolve, so you're going to have to build this. It's used a lot now today in media to get some really cool effects to transition from one clip to another, and you can customize this quite a bit, and I'm going to show you how to build that. I'm also going to show you a second version of this transition just to give you a different look at it so you can hopefully use this in your projects, and I'll give you the information to do that right now. Okay, so I have a couple clips I'm starting with, and the first thing we're going to want to do is go down, make sure the effects library is open, go down to the effects, grab a fusion composition, drag that down onto the timeline, and stretch that out to, about 6 or 7 seconds. Let's go ahead and add some tracks here. I'm going to go ahead and get it up to about 6 tracks here. Just right click in this area and say add tracks. Okay, so I have this fusion composition here. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up to video track 3, and so I can put some things underneath it here. Let's go ahead and grab the main track, put it on video 1, and we can take a look at this. Turn this off and we'll be able to see the video underneath it. So I have a sunflower here. The idea of this transition is I'm going to use this circular shape here. I'm going to transition from this video into this video down here. And so this is just a close-up of the bee on the actual sunflower. And so let's go ahead and turn that one off so we can see the video underneath it. I'm going to go ahead and set some markers here so I know when I want to start my transition. And so when this bee lands on there, I'm going to start it right about there. Go ahead and set that as a marker. And then I'm going to do a very quick spin right there. And then I'm going to go a little bit slower out of the spin transition. So I'll go ahead and set another marker there. So now I have those placeholders and I can snap on those very easily. That's a handy way just to get to the spot that you need to go without checking all of your timeline. And so make sure that this magnet is on once you set those markers to get that snap. If you have it off, it won't snap onto those points. If you have it on, it will. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and drag these 2 tracks over to the right just to kind of get them out of the way for now. Davinci Resolve Fusion has some issues here. To me, I've had some issues when I have stacks of material here all on top of each other, so just to avoid that, I'm going to get it out of the way there. Let's go ahead and turn on this track, select it, the fusion composition, make sure it's red around there, and go ahead and go to the fusion tab. And so here's our media out. Anything that's plugged into this will show up onto the edit page on that track 3 that we use there. So let's go ahead and create something here. Let's move this B over here, this main track. I'm going to hit F2 and just call this clip 1 because that is the track that I have it on. And if we pull this up into the viewing window on the left side, you can see that it is just our track 1 video. Let's go ahead and drag an ellipse tool over here, port that into that clip, and now we're going to get a cutout of part of the actual clip 1 video. And I want to size this down just a little bit. Let's go down to 0.3, and we need to do that on the height and the width to get a circle. And I'm going to drag this over to the center, kind of the center of this actual sunflower. And we'll go ahead and export this chain into the media out, and this is what we're going to see. If we go back here to the edit window, you can see we see the center of that. And it is video, it's not just a still. You can see the bee kind of crawling up there. And so that looks pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and move this up 2 more spots. So make sure that this track 6 is selected. Go up in here into the left corner, and we're going to select this transform so we can look at our controls here. And now if we change the rotation angle, you can see that it's going to rotate around this center point here. We don't really want to do that, so I want to move my anchor point, and I'm going to get it right on the center of that circle as close as you can. And to test that, you can do a rotation there. If it looks too wobbly for you, then just make the adjustment again. And so I think that is a little bit high or low. I'm pretty happy with that right there. We just want to make sure that that's centered, because when we rotate this, we don't want a wobbly circle all over the place. Okay, so now that I've got everything I need completed for video track 6, I'm going to make a copy of that. I'm on a Windows machine, so I can hold down the Alt key, press the left mouse button and hold it. So I can drag that down to video track 5. And now I have 2 copies of that. Let's go ahead and select track 5, go down to the Fusion tab again. I'm going to make an adjustment now on this ellipse. Let's go ahead and go up to a 0.52. That's a little bit larger than the last one. Go back to the edit window. We can take a look at both of those. So I have 2 different sizes now of those circles. And I have my original clip I've pushed out to the side there. So let's go ahead and go to video track 6. Make sure that's selected. So now I'm going to do some rotation animation. I'm going to turn off video track 5 so I can just work with 6. Go ahead and go to that first marker there. Select the actual rotation angle. Go ahead and make a keyframe there. Let's move to the second marker. And we're going to bump this up. In all, I want to go 360. And so I'm going to go all the way up to 250. So it's going to get a really fast rotation right away. And then this last marker, I want to set this at 360. So it's going to kind of drag out on that last one. So we can look at the actual curves of this. And I want to smooth this out a little bit. Let's get this audio out of the way here. And so if we select this point here, let's go ahead and make these curves. Same with this one. And same with this one. So I'm going to smooth that out a little bit. So that's going to be pretty fast there. And then it's going to slow down a bit. Drag that out a little bit. So it's going to kind of ease out there. Let's go ahead and close that. Turn off that track. We'll turn on the larger circle, which is track 5. I'm going to also replicate that process on track 5. I'm going to rotate that the opposite direction, so that'll be in the negative direction. And basically, I'm going to do a pretty fast rotation, and I'm going to slow it down a bit. So I'm going to go through that really quickly here in fast motion. So the next thing I want to do is put some blur on this. Make sure the effects library is selected again. Go to the open effects, and I want to just put a radial blur. Let's go ahead and put that on the top track and go down to this little pull down here, and I've got it on transform right now. I'll move this to open effects overlay, and let's go ahead and select that track. You can see this little marker here. You want to move that to the center of the circle, and then go ahead and go up to this open effects up here, and we're going to do some animation on this actual blur itself. So at the start, we're going to start this on 0. Go ahead and do a keyframe there, and I want to move this down to wrap around, and going up to this peak point here, we want to move this strength up quite a bit. And then this point here, we want to go back down. Kind of get that spin rotation there. I'll bump this down just a little bit. Okay, let's do the same thing for video track 5. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and pull my main track back down here. I'll put a marker on that track as well. Okay, now that I've got my markers on there, I'm going to just use a radial blur, and I'm going to use one more effect on this, so let's go ahead and add that one first. Go all the way down to the actual Resolve Effects Warp. Go ahead and drag that on the clip. You can see that the center of this is warping already. And if we turn these on, let's go ahead and do that. You can see those are going to kind of go away because I have these circles over the top of those. Let's make sure that our FX is centered. Select that track, go to the Open Effects, move that center point pretty much to the center of that sunflower as well there. And so as we animate this, you can see we've got power, swirl, but the biggest thing is the size. You can see we get some different looks here. Okay, so what we're going to do is animate this. Let's go ahead and change this size down to 0. Go ahead and animate the angle and the swirl and the power. And so we'll go to that first key point, and we need a lot of blur, a lot of rotation at this point. Got that size large enough. That's good. And so let's rotate it like that. And I want to kind of match up some of these lines here. Angle's a little too much here. I want to get these lines a little finer. There we go. And then we're going to go all the way back out. So we're just going to make that end that way. You can see that effect quickly happens. Okay, so that is the first part of the actual transition effect. And so you can see we go from one video, and we're going to need our second video in place here. One more thing I want to add onto this. Let's go ahead and add a blur onto this as well. Go all the way back up to the radial blur. We're going to start this at a... let's make sure we move that. We've got it. Okay, radial blur is open. Go ahead and move this smooth strength down to 0. We'll do a keyframe and go up to the largest point here. We want to add some blur on there just to kind of smooth some of this together. And then we're going to go back down to 0 here. I want to do actually another keyframe here. Back it down a bit. And then really get out of it here. Okay, that looks really good. Okay, now that I have all of these keyframes and everything already in place, I'm going to go ahead and copy these. Let's go ahead and use the Alt, drag them down 2 spots. And then I can go to composition. So basically video track 4 is, all the animation is similar to video track 6, and the same with 3 and 5. Let's go ahead and select video track 4. Go ahead and go to the Fusion tab. And I want to change out this clip here. So go ahead and change this one out. And let's bring in this other clip here. The same for video track 3. Okay, so now I have everything in place here. So as we kind of turn these off here, you're going to see what I have underneath here. There we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn these back on. And so these should all match. And so as we go through here, just after this main point here, I'm going to go ahead and set one last marker. And I'm going to change the color of that marker itself, just so I know it is a different marker. And this one's going to be my transition point. And so what I need to do is basically trim the back half of these and the front half of these. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to pull these over just in case I want to mess with them later. And I need to bring this one back over. Okay, so I want to trim this clip here as well, both of these clips. Okay, so I have this clip in place, and I need to do the animation to replicate this clip below it. So let's go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to turn everything else off so I don't get any spillage here. So let's go ahead and put on that Votex. Okay, open the Open Effects. Let's go ahead and make that size, angle, power, and swirl. Go ahead and do that wraparound. Size will go down there. Let's make the size quite a bit bigger now. Something like that. And then these all need to go back down then. Okay. And then let's go ahead and put on the actual radial blur. Same thing here. I'll do that quickly for you. Let's turn everything on now and take a look at this. And we need to do some trimming now as well with these clips. Trim these out. Really, we only need to do the top clip because we're not going to see that section on the bottom here. I'll just pull this one off to the side. Okay, and this is pretty much what it looks like right now. Take a look at that. And we can make a lot of different adjustments as we go here. We can even put in some borders and things like that. It's pretty easy to create these circular transitions. Hopefully that was pretty straightforward for you guys. And I'm going to show you something just a little bit different real quick here. So if I want to just take my two tracks here, I'll put this one on the bottom here and this one on the top. Let's go ahead and find the point here that I want to make this transition again. So say I want to do it right there. Let's go ahead and trim this out. I'll get rid of that piece right there. So I've got a hard transition now when I turn this track on. Boop. It just gets right there. And so the easier way to kind of do this, let's go ahead and trim this track here as well. So if we want to just do one, so we want to just do a simple transition, we can do the same thing that we did before. This is going to be a little bit faster for you here. So I'm going to make a composite copy of this one, and we're just going to bring in an effect, bring in a fusion composition in here, and we'll go ahead and make it that length so we can match up the start point pretty simply here. So let's go into that fusion composition. I'm going to turn these other clips off so I don't have any bleed here. And I'm going to bring in one ellipse into this track here. So we can see that's kind of the point where we start running out of real estate there. I can make it just a little bit bigger. Let's do that. And I can bump it up doing this little edge without having to adjust these width and height. All right, so let's go ahead and put that into the media out. Back to the edit page. And so one thing that I could do here, let's turn this on. So we kind of have that circle inside of this circle. And we would want to do a zoom, and then we can do the transition. So let's start about on this point here. Let's put a marker in that location. Might be a little far, so let's go a little closer. Okay, so what we're going to want to do at this point, let me turn this back off. I'm going to want to zoom in to this track quite a bit, starting at that point here and taking it to this point here. And then we're going to do the rotation, and we're going to do some radial blur as well here. So let's go ahead and put a keyframe on there. And at this point, we'll go 360. And we need a marker at this location as well. Let's smooth these out just a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's put on the radial blur. Animate this. At this point, I'm going to go all the way up to 0.75. And then at this point, we'll go back down to 0. And the video rotation angle at this point is 97,508. We'll copy that. And I'm going to select this track 2. I'm going to select track 3 up here, and let's actually move up this fusion composition up above that. And so right here, we need to make sure we're on the same angle. Go ahead and animate that one, and here we want to get down to 0 so we can match the track above it. At this point, we have that radial blur on there. We'll go ahead and add it to this one as well. Turn these tracks off first. And so at this point, we had 75. Animate that. Sure we pick wrap around here. And here, we want to be at 0. And so one thing that we want to do differently here, if we go to this track, we're still zoomed in at 0.210 or 2.10. So let's go ahead and do the same thing with this track. You don't have to be perfect here. So it can actually be a little bit smaller because we're transitioning. So we can see our B here. And then by the time we get to the end of this track, go ahead and animate that. By the time we get to this point, I want to be back at 1. So that's just a quicker version of doing that. I'm only using the one circle, so we can make some adjustments with that as well. And you can take a look at the final result there. And after I tweak some of the radial blur and the timing locations, here's what you're going to get. So hopefully those 2 different examples for you on using rotational transitions will be some help for you, and you can get some ideas for your own projects. Please provide some comments or questions, and I'll get those answered for you. Take care, guys.